112, Day 6, Week 2 of the Great Hiatus. I hope everybody had a great, safe, sane weekend away and that you're back to it this Monday morning, afternoon by now. We thank you for joining us again. I want to shout out, first of all, to a couple folks who had birthdays over the weekend. That would be Haley Bartlett and Tally Smitsky. So big happy birthday to both of you. If you have a birthday coming up, please do let us know so that we can give you a birthday shout out during these videos on Instagram, other social media platforms. Speaking of online communication, I'm sure everybody got the robocall this morning, but I do want to encourage you, if you haven't responded to that yet, go to the school website, lppacs.org, and do take a look at the letter that has been posted there. It gives you some guidance about what is being planned for the next couple of weeks. Next week, the week of March 30th, right now is being designated as an optional instructional week. That is going to give teachers time to get ready for transitioning to online curriculum. And we'll let you know more about what that's going to mean in terms of our classes. For right now, we're going to keep all our deadlines the same. So portfolio submissions, those deadlines are going to stay the same. The 30th for those, and then the next day, the 31st, for writing award submissions. We'll have more info for you soon, again, about what is coming up. If you are in a class with us, which I assume covers just about everybody who would be watching these videos, then you will see next week that we're going to be doing some stuff to prepare for the week after spring break, when it is anticipated that we're going to move toward some online curriculum. So just take a look at the letter on the school website, and then we will be back in touch very shortly with some more communications about what is to come. Now, we got a couple of questions up for today. Our first question comes to us from user Maddie Kish, who asks, where did the term 3 peas in a pod come from? Are there really 3 peas per pod? This is a great question. It's actually a better question than what I thought originally. Not that I thought it was a bad question, but I just didn't know the etymology, I guess, of this saying. So where does the term 3 peas in a pod come from? Well, the term peas in a pod comes to us, we believe, from the middle of the 16th century. And a writer named John Lilly, who wrote this term, apparently for the first time in English, in a book of his called The Euphonies of His England. And I'm going to quote you the passage. I'm going to try to do that for you. Let me just take a look here. The passage reads, wherein I am not unlike unto the unskillful painter, who having drawn the twins of Hippocrates, who were as like as one peas, and that's P-E-A-S-E, is to another. So a couple of things that are interesting about this. First of all, the reference there to Hippocrates. Hippocrates, the Greek physician who was known, among other things, for his observations about twins, and who gives us, we think, the Hippocratic Oath. It's not certain that he actually deserves credit for that, but he gets it anyway. And the Hippocratic Oath is the code of ethics that doctors, physicians observe. So back to John Lilly and this phrase, peas in a pod. The term, I think everybody recognizes this, because if you've ever seen peas in a pod, they're fairly similar. I think the original saying and the derivations of it usually are about 2 peas in a pod. The comparison between 2 people who seem to be, or 2 things who seem to be identical or nearly identical. Now, 3 peas in a pod is sort of an adaptation of that. I've seen it done. If I were at home right now, I would show you a beautiful Christmas ornament that I have that is 3 peas in a pod, and it allows space for pictures of your kids. And since I have 3 kids, the 3 kids' pictures are in there. So 3 peas in a pod is a saying. I think probably if it is more popular, and I don't know whether it is, than two peas in a pod, but if it is, it's probably because, as people who've been through survey poetry know, it has some internal rhyme, three peas, and then it also has that alliteration, peas, pod. So it's a slightly more satisfying take than, say, two peas in a pod. But the other thing I think maybe that is worth noting is, are there really three peas in a pod? I had no idea about this, but I looked it up, and it seems that if you've ever seen peas in a pod, they all do look very similar, almost identical, but there can apparently be as few as two or as many as 20. So in theory, you could say 20 peas in a pod. Now, I don't know how many identical people you could find outside of cults, Scientology, other things like that are strictly identical. Octomom, things like that. I don't know how many examples we could find in real life of 20 peas in a pod. But apparently, in nature, you can find as many peas as that in a pod. So there's something that I definitely didn't know. So thanks to Maddie Kish for that question. I hope that answers some of the questions about the etymology of the expression and also the science of it, because we try to check all the boxes here if we can. Now, our second question today comes to us from user Sarisa.Lee, who writes, "We need your favorite book, movie, song, and food." And she adds, "I might be on here more than once after I've come up with more devious questions." I don't know if I would classify this one as devious. I don't know how much of an answer you're going to get from me about this stuff. I got to tell you, books and songs especially, they change all the time. There are a bunch of them, and I kind of rotate from one to the other. So maybe we could start with songs, and just a song that is on my mind right now. It's certainly up there on my list of favorites. Morrissey has a new record out this week. I don't know how many people out there know Morrissey, are familiar with his work. Morrissey in recent years has become persona non grata for a lot of people in the music critic world, where I don't spend a lot of time these days, but I spend a little bit of time still because of my profession. And he's become persona non grata because of some of his political views, and of course that makes me like him all the more. But I think this is a song that artists in particular will respond to. So here is a very short clip from a 1992 song from the album Your Arsenal, Morrissey, and "We Hate It When Our Friends Become Successful."
We hate it when our friends become successful, and if they're northern, that makes it even worse. And if we can destroy them, you bet your life we will destroy them. If we can hurt them, well, we may as well. It's really laughable.
So there you have it. Again, I think that speaks to the experience of many of us, if we're honest, and that's one of the things that's always been great, I think, about Morrissey, the songwriter. Now, books. That's even harder, I think, than favorite songs, but there are things that you go back to from time to time. I want to read you a passage from, it's not actually a book, it's a compilation, I guess you would say, but certainly a very famous literary character, Sherlock Holmes, the creation of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and a character that I find myself coming back to. I just want to start you guys off, if you have never read any of this stuff, if you're only familiar with the films. I just want to start you off with the beginning, or the near beginning of one of the early stories, The Five Orange Pips. And orange pips are seeds in in a British translation. Here it is. It was in the latter days of September, and the equinoctial gales had set in with exceptional violence. All day the wind had screamed and the rain had beaten against the windows, so that even here, in the heart of great handmade London, we were forced to raise our minds for the instant from the routine of life and to recognize the presence of those great elemental forces which shriek at mankind through the bars of his civilization like untamed beasts in a cage. As evening drew in, the storm grew higher and louder, and the wind cried and sobbed like a child in the chimney. Sherlock Holmes sat moodily at one side of the fireplace, cross-indexing his records of crime, while I, at the other, was deep in one of Clark Russell's fine sea stories until the howl of the gale from without seemed to blend with the text, and the splash of the rain to lengthen out into the long swash of the sea waves. My wife was on a visit to her mother's, and for a few days I was a dweller once more in my old quarters at Baker Street. "Why," said I, glancing up at my companion, "that was surely the bell. Who could come tonight? Some friend of yours, perhaps?" "Except yourself, I have none," he answered. "I do not encourage visitors." "A client, then?" "If so, it is a serious case. Nothing less would bring a man out on such a day and at such an hour. But I take it that it is more likely to be some crony of the landlady's." Sherlock Holmes was wrong in his conjecture, however, for there came a step in the passage and a tapping at the door. He stretched out his long arm to turn the lamp away from himself and towards the vacant chair upon which a newcomer must sit. "Come in," said he. Now, there's more, and I encourage you to go find it if that is to your liking. But I always think as a scene setting, as a way of really getting across what the place in which a story is set is like, that is one of my favorite story openers. So, again, if that's something that draws you in, and I think it has a pretty good track record of drawing people in, then look up some of those early Sherlock Holmes stories. I think before Sir Arthur Conan Doyle turned on his creation and really just started doing it for the money, it was a pretty exceptional run that he had of Sherlock Holmes stories in the Strand magazine. So take a look at that. Now, favorite food. You know what I like? I like grapes. Grapes are good. You know what else I like? Is pizza. And grapes and pizza, if you're trying to lower your carbs, are two things that you probably shouldn't have. But these are still very high on my list of favorite foods, and every now and then I indulge. I can't speak to what some of these keto pizza things are like. I've been to Blaze Pizza and Robinson, and I thought that was okay. Some of this stuff just depends on what your expectations for the original food are. And if you like pizza, it's kind of tough to accept any kind of substitute. But those are certainly two favorite foods. And now, favorite movie. Well, I got to tell you, everything, or not everything, but a lot of the things that I know about teaching come from my favorite movie. My favorite movie is, from 1986, Back to School, starring the great, late Rodney Dangerfield. I'm just going to show you a very brief clip here that really, I think, says a lot about my own educational philosophy. There are other clips that are available online that can give you some examples of this. The movie, I should point out, if you've never heard me point it out, it features one of the all-time great cameos in movie history by the late, great Kurt Vonnegut. But here's a clip that, for me, really kind of sums up the movie. I wish I could show you what precedes it, but there's some content issues, so I can't. So you just have to accept this as my offering. But from Back to School, 1986, Rodney Dangerfield, and also the late, great Sam Kinison.
Go in there and blow out those commie bastards!
Good answer. Good answer. I like the way you think. I'm gonna be watching you.
A good teacher. He really seems to care. About what, I have no idea.
So there you have it. Favorite book, favorite song, favorite food, favorite movie. A lot of those things change, like I mentioned, so don't take that as gospel. But those are things that I'm thinking about right now. If you haven't asked a question yet, we encourage you still to do that. You can do it by asking the question as a comment on this video, or you can go to the Instagram post from last week where we put out the call for these questions, and you can post your question there. Either place is fine. I'm also going to post this video. I'm going to embed it in the assignment blog, sausageandbeer.wordpress.com. And if you want to leave a question there as a comment on the assignment blog, look, whatever, fine. Do whatever makes you feel good to some extent. You got to be careful how you apply that advice. Anyway, please do follow us if you have not done that on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. Twitter, as we mentioned, is a site where we are, or a platform, I should say, where we're trying to post contest opportunities, publication opportunities, things that can occupy you productively during this great hiatus. Again, just want to thank you all for staying in contact and to encourage you to stay in contact with me, with Mrs. Beringer, with Mrs. West. We all appreciate it. We are trying to keep those lines of communication as open and as expeditious as possible. Thanks everybody for being patient. I'm trying to get to emails every day, more so than I would during the average school day. So if it takes a day or two, don't panic. We are getting all your stuff, and we will be back in touch with you as fast as we possibly can. I'm going to wrap things up here. I will try to be back tomorrow with another Great Hiatus Day 7 video. But thanks once again to everybody for watching. I appreciate all those questions. We're going to keep plowing away and getting to as many of them as we possibly can. I think we're going to have plenty of time to do that. So tune back in tomorrow, and I'll get to more of them. Everybody, hope you have a great rest of the evening. Mind the new curfew that is now in place past 8 p.m. Do check out the school website if you haven't looked at that letter, and we will see you back here in some way, shape, or form tomorrow. So everyone, have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you then.